Donald Trump had you can call it a fairly decent week. He didn't get himself into any trouble per se this particular week. One of his chief surrogates, Rudy Giuliani, who loves coming on Fox and has stopped coming on the other mainstream media networks like CNN, which he got totally pissed off at, and he will not go on MSNBC any longer. Rudy just comes on Fox today, and I got to be honest with you, I miss Chris Wallace, because Chris normally cuts to the chase, and he doesn't allow his guests to filibuster, where Ms. Bream let him go on several times filibustering his points when she was specifically asking him about Donald Trump. Here's the clip that she did with Rudy Giuliani.
And hello again from Fox News in Washington. It has been a dramatic week for the Trump campaign, one that included a complete management overhaul. Campaign chairman Paul Manafort resigned amid controversy over some consulting work in Ukraine. Earlier in the week, Trump named the chairman of the Breitbart News website, Steve Bannon, as his chief campaign executive, and Kellyanne Conway, a veteran pollster, as his campaign manager. This comes as Trump attempts to broaden his appeal, launching a major ad campaign and expressing regrets over comments he's made. Joining me now is former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani, an advisor to the campaign. Mr. Mayor, welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Well, great pleasure to be here.
Okay, let's talk about the week you've had. It was mixed. There's been praise for some scripted, disciplined speeches by Mr. Trump this week. There's been talk of the campaign shakeup. But let's take a look at the polls, because this is the reality of what you're dealing with right now in several key battleground states. From Ohio to Virginia, you've got Mrs. Clinton leading by anywhere from 2.8 up to 11.2 percentage points. How do you turn that around at this point?
Well, you know, it's really early in that sense. I mean, at this stage of the...
All right, here comes his first lie. He's going to mention Reagan and another presidential candidate, it might have been Bush, as far as being behind at this point in their campaigns. That's not true. If he is talking about specific dates, then he's right. But the important fact to consider here is that at this point, at this date, the Republicans had not had their conventions yet. And when they came out of their conventions, they were nowhere near as far behind as Donald Trump is right now.
Campaign, George Bush, 41, was behind Michael Dukakis by 16%. By 16%. At this point in the campaign, Ronald Reagan was behind Jimmy Carter by numbers fairly similar to what you just showed right there. In fact, some of those are within the margin of error. So I'm not concerned at all. I think Donald Trump this week had an excellent week, much, much better than Hillary Clinton. In fact, she kind of disappeared for the week, except for her one appearance that I remember where she sat with a couple of Democratic-appointed police chiefs trying to claim that she has police support, and I don't know a single cop in the United States that supports her, and I know a lot of cops. And I think he what he did this week was he outlined in great detail what he wants to do for this country, about Islamic terrorism, about the economy, about bringing jobs back. He then made an audible, meaning he changed his schedule to go down to Louisiana to bring...
All right, let's stop him right there. He did not go into great detail on any of those subjects. He said what he always does, how he's going to bring jobs back, build a wall, he's going to stop immigrants from coming in, etc. But he didn't really go into any specific detail on how he's going to improve the economy, how he's going to defeat ISIS, etc. Now, as I'm going to let Mr. Giuliani make his next point, which he's going to be wrong on this as well.
Attention to the people of Louisiana while the president, you know, is still up there and wherever he is playing golf. I can't, as a mayor.
The president.
All right, and Donald Trump contrary to the wishes of the governor of the state of Louisiana, went down there and he did a 40-second photo op where he was handing out play school toys to kids. That's not what those people needed. But he made sure he was shown himself handing out, toys. Now, what ended up happening is, because he's a presidential candidate, the state also has to provide protective services. So he actually took away resources that could have been used elsewhere to help the people of Louisiana, which is why not only President Obama, but Hillary Clinton has not gone down there. They don't want to take away the resources that can be used to help the people of Louisiana. But Donald Trump decided to be a prick and go for a photo op like he's so presidential, he's going down there to be seen with the people. That's Rudy.
And says, of course, he's going down on Tuesday, but that was part of a very busy week for Mr. Trump. Let's talk through some of these speeches that he had that he's gotten a lot of praise for. The first one, you talked about that he's outlined his plan to go after to stop the spread of radical Islam. He talked numerous times in that speech about, quote, extreme vetting. We also have a little bit of his general election ad now airing in several key battleground states. Let's play a bit of that.
In Hillary Clinton's America, the system stays rigged against Americans. Syrian refugees flood in. Illegal immigrants convicted of committing crimes get to stay, collecting Social Security benefits, skipping the line. Our border open, it's more of the same, but worse.
All right, critics say...
Yeah, well, critics say that ad has been debunked because, number one, non-U.S. citizens cannot collect Social Security. They can work, they can pay into the Social Security system. Now, when I say non-U.S., I mean illegal aliens. But they cannot draw from Social Security. Now, in the interest of honesty, if they have kids here, and the kids are U.S. citizens, then the kids obviously would be able to draw from the Social Security system.
They're pointing to the imagery in that ad and saying it paints immigrants in a discriminatory fashion or it uses scare tactics. They want to know what the words extreme vetting mean. Can you tell us?
Extreme vetting means that from countries that house terrorists, countries from which attacks on the United States have been launched, there is going to be a very, very strict test in order to get into the United States. You don't have a right to come to the United States. There's no such right to come to the United States. So we should be taking in people who believe in us, who believe in what we believe in, and who are dedicated to the principle of a nation of laws, not Sharia law, but American law. And from certain countries where we've had problems, it's going to be pretty hard to get in. And it should be. For example, taking in Syrian refugees, which Hillary Clinton wants to increase by 550%. That's 5.5 times more than Obama has brought in. She wants to be the Angela Merkel of the U.S. ISIS has told us they are going to put terrorist operatives in with those Syrian refugees. They've actually told us. Now, we would have to be stupid to allow them to come into the United States. We would have to be out of our minds. What we should do is set up a no-fly zone in Syria and put them there. Keep them in their country so they're not flooding Germany. Look at how crime has gone up in Germany since they've allowed Syrian refugees in. All of a sudden you had terror attacks in 3 or 4 different places in Germany. So we don't want that to happen in the United States. We have enough homegrown problems than to bring in a bunch of Syrian refugees, I'm sure many of whom are legitimate people, but we've been told they are going to hide terrorists with them.
All right,
and Hillary Clinton wants to increase that by 5 times. So she wants to make the risk 5 times worse than it already is. And we already have 1,000 investigations, according to the director of the FBI, of terrorists here in the United States. So she wants to add to the 1,000 investigations.
Let's talk about another speech that Mr. Trump gave this week, and he did something that we have not seen before, at least publicly. He talked about having regrets. I'm going to play a bit of that speech and also Mrs. Clinton's response.
Sometimes, in the heat of debate and speaking on a multitude of issues, you don't choose the right words, or you say the wrong thing. I have done that. Believe it or not, I regret it.
He is still the same man who insults Gold Star families, demeans women, mocks people with disabilities, and thinks he knows more about ISIS than our generals. There is no new Donald Trump. This is it.
Mayor, do you think he can win over his critics, convince them he's truly sorry?
Now watch this. Instead of him answering her question, he goes into this long diatribe on why Hillary Clinton needs to apologize. Here you go. Get ready.
Well, first of all, I'd like to see her apologize for her lying to Gold Star mothers when she gave them a false narrative of how their sons were killed at Benghazi and said it was about a Mohammed video when she dumped.
Okay, one, that wasn't a false narrative. There were two basic narratives going, and both of them were true. They captured one of the guys that was responsible for the killings at Benghazi, and he himself said that the video had something to do with the attack on the consulate.
Well, knew it was a terrorist attack because she had told her daughter that on an email the night before or the night before that. I'd like to see her apologize for all the money that the Clinton Foundation has been taking, let's say from Saudi Arabia, where women are not allowed to drive. You tell me she's a feminist and she takes...
All right, so if you're going to use that as a barometer, then you basically should say that we don't need to be buying oil from Saudi Arabia because for the same reasons. But of course, not going to mention that.
Money from a country where women are not allowed to drive. You tell me she's a feminist when she spent a great deal of time covering up a lot of the misdeeds of her husband and engaged in a lot of the attacks on the women who were telling the truth. She's a feminist except where it comes to her husband, where she attacks the women who are telling the truth about it. So she deserves to give the American people an apology. She certainly should give us an apology for having been found completely careless in handling national security information.
Now that I'll agree with him on. Yeah, I mean, she says she would have done it the wrong way, but I really haven't heard a full-throated apology from her on how she handled her emails. She basically has said that if she had to do it over again, she wouldn't do it. So that one, you know, even a broken clock is right at least twice a day.
Jim Comey said that. She should apologize for lying on this show about what Jim Comey said.
Well, we're going to talk more about that, but with a specific focus on him, do you think that it's possible for him at this point for people who have written him off because of some of his comments, do you think they're going to accept that expression of regret, not an apology, but expression of regret? Do you think it's enough?
I think it is, and I think you're going to see that throughout the rest of the campaign. Donald Trump is extremely focused now. If you look at this entire week, you can see it was focused on issues, hard issues, tough issues, issues on which the American people agree with him and with us, maybe 60, 65%. 65 to 70% of the American people believe the country is going in the wrong direction. And if he can convince them that he is the person to lead us, then certainly he's the only one to give us change. What they're trying to do, the Clinton campaign has no campaign. She hardly appeared this week. I don't know where she was.
Then why is she doing so well in the polls?
You can't answer that one. So now he's going to spin and blame it on the media as to why she's doing so well. She's doing so well because Donald Trump is doing so poorly. People don't trust him, period. And he says such, contentious things. But Rudy's going to blame it all on the mainstream media.
Why?
It's working for her.
Well, what's working for her is she has an entire... Read Michael Goodwin's column today in the New York Post, and you can figure out what her campaign is. She doesn't need to campaign. She has the New York Times, she has the Daily News, she has ABC, she has CBS, she has NBC. She has an entire media empire that constantly demonizes Donald Trump and fails to point out that she hasn't had a press conference in 300 days, 200 days, 100 days, I don't know how long. Fails to point out several signs of illness by her.
All right, now here he comes with the bullshit illness that Fox has been pushing, especially Hannity, all of which has been debunked, including a letter from her doctor that says that those videos that he's going to mention that are online, they're false. But he's going to use those erroneous videos and lines of attack anyway, even though he knows they're false. So that tells you about the character of this guy.
What you got to do is go online.
Her campaign and a number of people defending her saying there's nothing factual to the claims about her health, and that's speculation at best.
So go online and put down Hillary Clinton illness. Take a look at the videos for yourself.
Okay, I want to make sure that we get to something that is criticism coming from within the party and give you a chance to answer that, because this week 123 Republicans, some current lawmakers, former lawmakers, other top GOP leaders wrote a letter to RNC Chair Reince Priebus urging him to divert his money away from the Trump campaign and any money available to the down ballot races. They're worried about the Senate and the House, saying, quote, "We believe that Donald Trump's divisiveness, recklessness, incompetence, and record-breaking unpopularity risk turning this election into a Democratic landslide, and only the immediate shift of all available RNC resources to vulnerable Senate and House races will prevent the GOP from drowning with a Trump-emblazoned anchor around its neck." Your response?
You know, the most amazing thing to me is that Republicans would do that to other Republicans. I had the great honor and privilege of working for Ronald Reagan. In fact, he's the only president I worked for. And he always believed that the 11th commandment was, don't attack another Republican. So I'm embarrassed for the people who wrote that. I'm also embarrassed for how frightened they get so quickly, which is certainly not a sign of leadership, and I wrote a book about leadership.
But it may be a sign of being a realist and knowing when you've hitched your wagon to a dead horse.
One chapter is about courage. And the reality is, he is not that far behind. He is well within striking range in every one of the key states.
That is such bullshit. She just gave him the stats. You know, he's down as much as like 11 points in some of the states. I think the closest he was 2.6% Ohio. So that one is close and could be within the margin of error. But he's got there are some states where he's behind by double digits, and she's contesting him in states that were never considered in play for Democrats. States like Arizona, states like Utah, states like Georgia. He's not going to mention those, but he's going to try to spin some bullshit line about Trump being in play in some states that he shouldn't be in play. That's bullshit.
A couple of other states that most Republicans don't have a chance of winning. So this is unnecessary fear on their part. And I'm sort of really disappointed in them. But look, Donald Trump is not a typical Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative candidate. This is an insider versus outsider campaign. She is the consummate, corrupt Washington insider. And she is thoroughly corrupt. And so is the Clinton Foundation. If I were back in my old job as U.S. Attorney, I would probably indict the Clinton Foundation as a racketeering enterprise. They took money from money launderers, criminals, dictators, people who abuse women as a matter of government policy. She did favors for those very people who gave money to the Clinton Foundation.
That's already been debunked, but he opens up the point of asking for Trump's tax returns, which she doesn't use. But Rudy loves throwing out the traditional Republican attack lines, most of which, not all, but most of which have been debunked.
Example, UBS gave the Clintons altogether over $1 million. She made a call to the IRS, asking the IRS to go easy on their attempts to get identities from UBS. In my day, that was considered bribery when I was a U.S. attorney, and I prosecuted several very prominent politicians and convicted them of bribery.
Mr. Mayor.
That particular item that he mentioned has also been debunked.
Including 2 congressmen.
We've got to leave it there. Again, the Clinton Foundation and all those associated say that they are not under investigation and that they've been clear and transparent. So we will stay tuned because
Rudy, they're no longer under investigation, and they have been somewhat transparent. Unlike Donald, who we're still waiting for his tax returns, and now we need to find out about his dealings with the Bank of China, and also dealings with the Russians, and we won't be able to find that out until and if and when we see his tax returns, his various schedules, and his supporting documents. Rudy, you're a turd.